Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the newest label collaboration project from Dreamville called Revenge of the Dreamers 3. So I don't tend to cover label or posse collaboration projects, and believe it or not, I actually have a reason. Because they're rarely focused or well curated, the spread of talent isn't all that consistent, and it can be tough to pin down the exact mood of the thing, especially if you got a collaboration with a bunch of bona fide spitters, yet no one defined leader or one person who's ahead of the pack. Because on the one hand, they're all trying to go bar for bar, and there is some level of intensity, but on the other hand, it's all supposed to be casual and making a couple moments of magic in the studio while you pass the blunt and henny around, try to keep things loose and fun, and that can lead to some real tonal dissonance in the overall product. And if anything, I expected that to be all the more pronounced on the newest Dreamville collaboration. Now, full disclosure, I did go back to hear the first two Revenge of the Dreamers projects, and while they both had some striking moments, they were exactly what you would expect from a label headed up by J. Cole, where in addition to all my other issues, the early criticism is that a lot of his acts either sounded like him or were R&B singers. That was true, and that wasn't always the best things when the song started losing focus or momentum. And given that I'm not the biggest J. Cole fan by any metric, I didn't really have high expectations for Revenge of the Dreamers 3. Yeah, J. Cole's in a very different space than he was in 2015, and he had a more diverse and well-rounded crew around him, but I hadn't been all that impressed by the songs that had charted thus far, and I wasn't really buying into all the hype. Sure, it's longer, have to get those streams somehow, but isn't the point of a label collaboration to emphasize and promote that label talent, not bring in a bunch of guest appearances from over a dozen other acts not signed to Dreamville? But okay, fine. This is going to be one of those overblown and overhyped collaborations, simultaneously trying to create hype and also sound relaxed and creative at the same time. So again, low expectations. What do we get out of Revenge of the Dreamers 3? Well, I'll be blunt. This is a little bit tougher to process than I'd expected, mostly because not only did the majority of my predictions actually come true in how this follows the previous two Revenge of the Dreamers projects, I'm left wondering if at some point, for as much hype was placed around these recording sessions, they then realized there was less here that was truly great. They need to make this stick, so they just threw as much at the wall as they could. And more to the point, for as many striking moments as we got from the Dreamville roster, you easily got as many, if not more, standouts from the guests, which would make you think Dreamville's more of a facilitator than positioning themselves as a dominant label. But even then, it feels like there's a weird lack of payoff to this sort of facilitation, leading to an album that is okay enough, the fans will probably like it, but it seems to flounder in its task to actually do something more. I'll admit it, I'm underwhelmed. Because let's ask the hard question. What is Revenge of the Dreamers 3 actually trying to say or do? I'll be generous to say this album isn't trying to have much of a cohesive theme or overarching point. That's a rarity for collaborations, that's fine. So let's ask the question again, what does this want to do? Because if it's meant to give every artist on Dreamville a unique moment to shine on their own, well, outside of J. Cole himself, I'd say that's hit or miss at best, given how many voices are in this kitchen and how many of them just aren't signed to Dreamville. Let's get real for a second. As much as I like the soulful opener, Under the Sun, was it J. Cole's verse the one getting attention, or the fact that the baby kind of stole the show with an uncredited Kendrick Lamar of all people on the hook? I like J.I.D. on Ladies, 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 but I can't be the only one who thinks that Dreamville had no idea how to maximize his strengths, because on that song, you then get T.I. swooping in for a smooth verse and the outro. This was also an issue on Down Bad, which I've already discussed on Billboard Breakdown, and while it's grown on me almost entirely thanks to the hook from J.I.D., it's not structured to pay off the best verses here, and oh wow, Swerve literally has his verse fade out, where Maxo Cream manages to be more interesting after the beat switch and J. Cole's hypocritical rambling. I mean, J. Cole, how can you say you're not judging anyone when just a few lines earlier, you're judging girls for being brand focused and superficial? And are you really gonna drop that when there are flexing songs just like it on this album that shows that you or some of your crew are just as label obsessed? But circling back to showcasing the roster, again, I can't be the only one who thinks it looks some type of way for Dreamville when you get a song like Remembrance, Run It Back, where J.I.D. and J. Cole both show up, and then Vince Staples at his most yelping and nasal takes the final verse and steals a show. Or how Ari Lennox and Ty Dolla $ign might have good interplay until Dreezy shows up to drop her best verse in years. Where the hell was this on Big Dreez? And that's not getting to the points where Smino and Saba cut loose on the closing track Sacrifices, although Smino probably shouldn't say he can smell a girl's pussy from a certain distance, or where 2-9 and Ski Mask the Slump God take their outsized charisma to work on Costa Rica, or a Buddy's borderline cartoonish presence keeps sucking up all the air across any song he's featured on. Keep in mind, they're not Dreamville acts, but they're attracting the most attention, and in some cases they're given more airtime than your established MCs like Boz or Cause, and that's before I remain consistently underwhelmed by Omen and Loot sounding like lesser versions of J. Cole himself. If you're allowing your own roster to get outshined, that's a problem. But what wound up being far more telling was a smaller moment of Costa Rica, where J.I.D. jokes about getting mistaken for Sway Lee, only for Guap Dad 4000, who sounds like a Sway Lee wannabe, to yelp through the hook. And again, he's got a more recognizable vocal presence, and he's not signed to Dreamville. But okay, let's frame the question a little bit differently. Who from Dreamville does benefit from this? Honestly, while I'd argue that Earth Gang gets some space to really step out, and I think Cause and Reason have some fun interplay on the lightly treasonous LamboTruck, a great moment if only for its audacity, the strongest beneficiary from all this seems to just be J. Cole himself. Again, he's on nearly half the tracks, he's the only act besides Earth Gang who gets a solo entry, although it's with a thoroughly underwhelming middle child that was clearly placed on the album to juice the streaming numbers. It doesn't really fit, and his aesthetic, it blankets the entire album. And like with previous collaborations, that might be one of the biggest factors why this isn't nearly as interesting or punchy as it should be for me. Yeah, across the board, the flows are consistent. Dreamville can certainly recruit a lot of competence in that department. But if you're looking for the moments of punchy wordplay, or payoff to a lot of small connective references, or even anything in the way of storytelling, it's hard not to feel like this album is sorely lacking, especially when it comes to the unique content or any sort of credible insight. But you know what? Even if you're just looking to chill and throw down fun bars with ease or just goof off, I'm not really sure you're getting that either. Because then you get cuts like 1993 where Buddy's trying to get them to smoke and not rap, and yet when I hear all the underwhelming sex references from damn near the entire crew, including J. Cole, I almost agree with Buddy there. Hell, for his presumed leader of the crew, it's a bad sign when I take a look at the actual flexing that he puts forward, and then to find J. Cole dry, underweight, and generally lacking any sense of menace or flair. I get that you had to give Young Nudie something, you did sign him for some reason, but Sunset is forgettable gunk with an okay bit of melody on the hook, and given how you're ending out Sacrifices, trying to bring up what was given up to make this, following a pretty damn good verse from Saba, you then tell your girl you want to damn near kill her so you can be the one to build her up again, even as you emphasize your own success and shout out how much you love her and your son to just end things off. What was the sacrifice here again? It's endemic to all this project. A lot of planting, an utter lack of proper payoff. But you know what, again? Maybe I'm overthinking all this. Maybe it's just a project just to vibe out on flows and bars, that's it. It's not like Dreamville's been positioned as a conscious, forward-thinking label or something, fronted by a rapper who's built his reputation on being deep or something, but fine, maybe you just need to relax, just take it all in. Well, this is where you get to the production, which, like for most of J. Cole's music throughout the past couple of years, feels increasingly colorless, discordant, and not really cultivating much of a consistent vibe thanks to an influx of slapdash mixing, blown-out filters, and percussion that sounds of a cheaper and lower fidelity and quality than the rest of the mix. And what this leads to is a more gritty, stiffer sound that implies a more serious, intense vibe, not quite as groovy, and when the melodic hooks are not as prominent, it only draws more attention to the wordplay that might flow well, but that you would expect to say more given that emphasis. Now, I'll give them some credit for some tricks of the lyrical cadence that make the hooks a little bit stickier. I brought up Sunset for J. Cole, and even Down Bad with J.I.D's hook, it has grown on me, although I'd argue that Kendrick still runs away with this on Under the Sun. But the cuts that wind up working the best here are just the ones with a little bit more richness, more loose, organic tone. It might just be a ruckus and ignorant interlude, but Wells Fargo and the loose, shouty gang vibe, it's probably the most actual fun anybody seems to be having on the project. And yet beyond that, I mean, on the one hand, I like the scratchy soul sampling, backing up tunes like Under the Sun, the dusty bass behind 1993 and Sacrifices, the washed out chipmunk knock of Got Me actually kind of worked, and even if it sounds really damn off-key, I can even vibe with Self-Love. But on the flip side, when you get the grainy but tinny oscillations that Don't Hit Me Right Now, probably the song I like the least on this project, the fractured off-key melodies that still wind up anchoring PTSD and Sleep Deprived, even if I like the percussion groove on the former case, then you get the warping chipmunk sample behind Ladies, 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 and then the gargled fragment of guitar behind Sunset, you often hit just as many ugly or discordant tones as you do good ones, and only further muddies the overall mood. None of which is helped by this project running over an hour with about as many lyrical ideas to sustain a project roughly half that length. But to summarize, okay, look, the more listens I gave this, the more I think the priorities might have been misaligned and certainly oversold, especially in comparison with the first two Dreamville compilations. For as much hype was generated around this project, it's a mess of clashing tones, slapdash production, and a lack of focus surrounding Dreamville's roster in favor of guest appearances that can sometimes just steal the show. Yeah, the flows are nice, but what the flows add up to feel underwhelming in terms of depth and intensity. Hate to say it, but the smaller scope of the previous two compilations might have been their saving grace. They were still unfocused, but the moments they sparkled all the brighter, and it felt like there were more of them per volume. And for someone who has never really bought into the J. Cole cult of personality, yeah, this did not convince me, not by a long shot. I'm giving it a strong 5 out of 10, but my recommendation is that you find the guest appearances that might appeal to you, just take those. Beyond that, yeah, just Dreamville fans for this, or wait for the album bomb. Otherwise, yeah, take it or leave it. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. I'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. I can imagine this is going to annoy a lot of you. That's what the comments are for, but hey, if you want to buy or stream it, links also in the description below, and I got the poll up there. I am curious where you guys might fall on this, because again, I have not quite seen overwhelming critical acclaim for this sort of posse cut here either, and that kind of is telling. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do, I improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And hey, if you're looking for that next episode of Billboard Breakdown dropping tomorrow, it's on the card right over here, right in the channel right over there, if you also want to subscribe. But hey, till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.